Today, I'm going to teach you my entire process of creating a video walkthrough with multiple agent cameos in the final product using a 360 camera. I'm going to be using the Insta360 ONE RS 1" edition because let's be real, I love this little camera, but the process will work the same with any 360 camera that does video. Keep in mind, a lot of my processes will involve some of the specialized features from the Insta360 line of cameras, so that's what I would personally recommend. I'll talk about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and I'll give multiple views, not only from the 360 cam I'm shooting on, but also the Go 3 footage I had strapped to my head, and of course, this talking head footage you're looking at right now. What's the deal, everyone? Welcome back to the studio. I'm Jeremy Deal, and I did a video a few months ago about how to do a video similar to this. Everyone loved it, and so I took that process, simplified it, I made it quicker, while also adding these agent pop-up cameos in there. Basically, it's building on everything you learned in that last video. So if you've not watched that one yet, it's longer and it's more drawn out than this one, but I'll link it in the top so you can check that out first if you want to know a little more about the entire process in more nuance. I don't promise to make this video the shortest video you've ever watched, but I promise to give you as much practical knowledge that I have with as little fluff as possible in this one. With that being said, let's jump straight into the process of pre-production for these videos. Personally, I don't sell many of these as standalone products. They're all done as an add-on to the original photo shoot ordered for the property. This allows me to start thinking about and planning my route while I'm photographing the property, which is another way I technically cut down on my pre-production time because I'm kind of doing two tasks at once there. Working with an efficient agent really pays off for these because they come in with a game plan of what they'd like to do and the rooms they'd prefer to be in advance. But even if this is their first rodeo, you can easily coach them through with a few simple steps. They can be anywhere in the property. And I'll give you some tips and pointers towards the end of the video for, these situations. And I'll tell you the spiel I actually give all my agents when they book it. The final produced video has to be less than a minute to work well on every social media site. So if the property's over 3,000 square foot, you'll definitely be leaving parts of the house out of the tour. Now, I actually recommend to leave out the majority of the extra rooms and fluff and only show the special stuff, but I leave that choice to the agent. I also tell them realistically, they will only be able to be 3 to 4 times in the video, so don't plan to be in every shot. Plan to make special, impactful moments to appear because that's when the viewers will be paying the most attention to. Now, let's jump back into the on-site process. After wrapping up the photo shoot, I like to talk with the agent for about 5 to 10 minutes, talk about any ideas they may have had or any props they may have brought for the shoot. You can do this before the photo shoot as well, but I like to have the layout in my head before hearing any ideas. My brain works in funny ways sometimes, but do whatever works best for you. Another reason I prefer to talk about it after the photo shoot is that allows us to do a basic mock-up of how the tour will go before we ever press the record button. Flowing back and forth with their ideas and how these ideas can realistically be accomplished in the property and go is one of my favorite parts of this process. Perfect. It's that act of finally being able to break out of the stagnant feeling that real estate photography provides on most occasions. Don't get me wrong, I love what I do, but anyone who shoots 5 houses a day, 5 days a week can feel my pain on how every room starts to feel the same. Lots of deja vu, and this simple step of being creatively open for just a few minutes can really bring my mood back up and get me grooving again. I think this is also the part that matters the most because it allows the agent to feel a part of the process. This is where you can really build client loyalty in the future. You're giving them a service and attention they rarely get from other creators in our craft, and once you can creatively vibe with a person, the chances of them hiring you again over someone $10 cheaper seems silly. They now prefer to work with you over the cost of savings, and that is one of the hardest kinds of clients to get in this industry. In a world filled with turn and burn, lower and lower clients, I want to build strong agent relationships that weather the storm of cheap photo franchises popping up in my town 3 times a year. If that's the kind of advice and knowledge you're looking for, then give the video a like and sub to the channel would be awesome. Let me know I'm on the right track with the way I make these videos and the information I put in them. I have a members program here on YouTube that gets you access to full-length video edits and some topics I don't put out in the public sphere, but only join up if you're looking for that kind of stuff and can't afford it. No worries if not. So at this point, you've done everything except the easiest part, actually shooting it with the Insta360 brand cameras. This is so easy. It's crazy. I shoot in 6K 30 FPS, auto, everything. I like to attach the extension pole and legs to the camera because it makes a much easier way to steady your shot, holding it similar to the way you would move around with a glide cam instead of a gimbal. The way these cameras work, you will always be able to see a seam where the two lenses meet, especially when passing close to objects like walking through doorways. So keep the front of the lens pointed the direction you want to be viewing in the final video. That's the most helpful tip I can give you here. You don't have to be perfect, but I always just turn the screen and make it face the opposite direction. So that way I can use it as a basic guide when I'm filming. There's also the option to turn on flow state stabilization and direction lock. I choose to keep both of these on because it tends to make the post-production work easier. But if I'm not mistaken, you can turn these both on in the application back on your computer if you don't have it on when shot. I recommend doing 2 entire pass-throughs of the property because, well, if something messes up on the first one, you can easily cut in sections of the other clip you have. Not only do you want this extra clip for backup, but 9 out of 10 times I always notice something I should have moved during the first run. The most I've ever done is 3 walkthroughs, but typically after 2 to 3, the agent is done and totally cool with whatever you have anyway. Now, before we jump into the office and start editing these videos, I'll give you a few of those tips I promised earlier on how to work with agents for these videos. First place I like to place every agent is opening the front door and letting the viewer into the property. This will always be the easiest opening for agents of any confidence level, and the fact that they don't have to speak during all this makes it much easier to sell. If you listen, you can hear me giving agents cues to move. This is the most important thing you can do as the creator and set up in advance.
And go.
I'm letting that agent know when they should start the action, and then I let them know again once they're off screen so they can scramble to their next position and wait for me to arrive with the camera again.
Second.
Yep.
Another huge tip I can give you here, agents will want to be in the living room and kitchen for almost every videos, but those rooms are typically right next to each other in the house. So that makes that process pretty much impossible unless you want to run it over and over and over and over and over until you get it right. I'll let them know right away you can only appear in every 3rd shot. This will allow them enough time to set up for when you arrive to that next room. I also really love to end each video with the agent outside in the backyard, so the last thing the viewer sees is the agent's face. Keep in mind, these videos are not just there to sell the property, they're also a huge marketing opportunity for the agents hiring you to do them. Now, let's jump into the office and start the editing process, but don't worry, as long as you followed all these steps and advice so far, well, this should take no time at all. I use 2 different programs for editing these videos. The first one being the Insta360 Studio. It's a desktop program, and the second being Davinci Resolve for the speed ramping and finishing touches. But let's not jump ahead of the game here. We start in the Insta360 Studio program by simply dragging over your footage. You can bring it in straight from the camera and work that way, but I tend to keep a backup of data for a while, so I work off my computer files. Once they've loaded up, you can click on the top right to the stabilization type, and here you can see those 2 I mentioned earlier in the video, flow state and direction lock. If you don't have direction lock clicked, the viewpoint will always face the same direction instead of whatever direction you were pointing the camera at during that time. Typically, the camera will always be looking at you in selfie mode, so you'll have to determine the direction you want it looking and mark a keyframe. This will allow you the option for the way you would typically keyframe things. I try to keep my tilt angle set to 0 because this is the up and down angle, and I prefer verticals as straight as possible. I do adjust the pan angle to move viewpoint left to right with the keyframes a lot during the shot for fine adjustments. You'll also want to come over here to the right side of the frame and pick your aspect ratio. I prefer a 1:1 ratio personally, but agents prefer the 9:16 look because it fills the phone frame, and I can totally understand why they would. I just think the 1:1 adds more width for a more naturalistic viewpoint. I digress. Now, you just roll through your footage and keyframe it up to look like you want, or until it looks like this. Again, I refer to my earlier video. If you don't know how to keyframe in this program, go watch that because it gives a full breakdown of the process. Export, and now it's time to bring it in for the fun stuff, Davinci Resolve. This is where I do all of my speed ramping and effects and title end screens for the properties. There's some really basic timeline work we're going to be doing here, so don't let anything overwhelm you. It's very simple to do, but we'll give you a big wow factor in the end. So let's go ahead and start this from scratch. The very first thing I'm going to do is pull in my title screens here for the front and back. First for the property info and last for the agent information. I'm using some from the M Real Estate plugin that I recently reviewed, and if you want to check out that video, I'll link it above too. I like to mark the end of my timeline at 58 seconds so I don't edit over that time, and I put the end of the agent information screen there. Then, after dragging in the clips, I begin to retime those clips. You can access this easily by selecting and right-clicking on the clip, going to the right here, and retime curve. Once you do that, you should see retime speed up in the top left. If it states something different, you can click this little arrow and go click it manually. Now is the part I find fun. Zooming through all the boring parts and exposing all the slow pans and pushes you planned out ahead of time. To add a keyframe, you can press this little diamond here, and the way I do things is I mark the keyframe, move forward until I find the next interesting start, and I mark again. Then I pull the middle part up, and that's what speeds it up. Over here on the right-hand side is where you can find the speed percentage, and typically mine ends up going to around 5,000%, so don't be afraid to crank that number up. There are some finishing touches, but we'll wait to the end to have all that lined up and ramped everywhere. You want to wait till the end for the next step. If you do it early in the process, it makes readjusting the timeline a little more annoying. So once you have the entire clip adjusted to the time you want it to be, start adding these curve adjustments to your timeline. This will smooth off those jarring cuts to motion, and you can grab these little tabs sticking off and adjust those curves further to your liking. Go through and do this to all your speed ramps, and then we can move on to the finishing touches that sell the whole thing and make it look a lot more natural. We're going to be adding two things here. One being a simple swoosh noise that you like, and the other being an adjustment layer that adds a mock zoom. We can vary the strength of, number one, adding the adjustment layer. Come on over to your effects tab and search the term adjustment, and it will pop up as the first one. Drag it onto your timeline and make it about 10 seconds long. Next, pop into your color tab by pressing the little button at the bottom of the screen and selecting the adjustment clip you have just created. We're going to need two nodes here, and if you don't know what a node is yet, I have a bunch of videos on Davinci Resolve going over them, but think of them as an adjustment layer that go left to right instead of bottom to top. Right-click on this first node and hover over Add Node, then Add Serial Node. To the first node, we will be adding a directional blur, and here you can pause to see those settings that I like. To the second node, we'll be adding a zoom blur, and again here you can see those settings I like the most. Back over to the editing tab. Now we want this effect to fade in and fade out like the curves adjustments we made to the speed ramping earlier on. So if you hover your mouse to the front and rear top of this clip, you will see little white tabs pop up. This will allow you to easily fade this effect on and off. I personally like 3 seconds on and 3 seconds off, but it's totally your choice. You can also save this effect to your library by simply dragging it over to your media pool over here. Now, once you have one, simply hold the Alt key and drag the clip over to create a copy. Put one on top of every speed ramp you make. Clutch piece of advice here. If you're having problems locating your speed ramps easily, pull up your retime curve and make sure you have the clip selected. You can then press the M key on your keyboard to leave a mark on that clip to make finding that spot and lining it up super simple. Guess what? You're done. All that's left is the export. Upload and impress the hell out of your clients. It's way easier than using a cell phone and gimbal on site because all those adjustments are done in post, so no shaky footage or looking a little bit the wrong way. No 20 runs to get it perfect either. Just a simple, really good looking product to make you a little extra money at a house you're already there to shoot. As always, keep rocking and rolling, enjoy what you're doing, make smart business decisions, and let me know if you like this process better than the last one. Catch you next time. Man, I just keep finding more and more cool little things to do with this camera. Who knows what I'll do next?